Welcome to an increasing number of you viewers on both sides of the Atlantic. We really appreciate your attention and involvement. I'm your moderator, Robert Terzian, in this series of conversations with Dr. Bogdan Kotnis. The aim is to bring a Polish perspective to the global turmoils we've been experiencing as of late. Hello, Bogdan.
Hey, hi Robert, how you doing? And welcome to all who are watching. A continuous thank you uh, for your time, questions, and comments.
Bogdan, why does the Polish perspective differ from the mainstream American view of politics, especially European geopolitics? Can you give us some insight?
Well, let's look at it this way. The United States is a relatively young seafaring country with huge east and west coasts, enjoying secure borders to the north and the south. Uh, on the other hand, Poland is a continental country with aggressive neighbors in the west and the east. Poland thinks in terms of over 1,000 years of history, while the US spans over 250 years of national experience. So it's like 1 to 4. And that history plays a vital role, especially when you think about it. Now, the United States has developed all these years without defeat. Poland has recently enjoyed little over 30 years of peace since Russia, its last colonial occupier, left. I would say that because of these differences, Americans and Poles look at the world differently. But despite these differences, once we work together, as in the American War of Independence, World War I, World War II, Afghanistan, Iraq, and now in Ukraine, Americans and Poles are surprised at how similar we are and how well we work together. And what brings us very closely lately is the Russian war in Ukraine that challenged the world balance we have known since the end of World War II.
Well, how does the Polish and American perspective differ when it comes to the Ukraine?
The situation in Ukraine is dire. A dire situation for Ukraine means a dire situation for Poland, and eventually for America if nothing changes. Poles would be now in a precarious position if the United States left Ukraine, because Poland could not do so. Poland could not just up and leave. It will still remain between Russia and Germany. And both of these countries want to strengthen their position in Europe and weaken America's standing there. And I look at it this way: Russian win in Ukraine means a loss for America in Europe, which will in turn weaken the American position vis-a-vis China. It will mean American global abdication as a reliable partner and the world leader, but it is not an existential threat to its independence. Now, Poland sees Ukrainian loss as very dangerous, and so does the United States. But for the United States, it's not a do or die situation. So the difference is with the level of magnitude. For Poland, it is an existential do or die. For Americans, it is the dangers of losing its prestige and some money, but it is not an essential existential threat. No one's going to be bombing New York City or Los Angeles.
Well, you make a good point about that. It's not likely to happen tomorrow, as it might be, but you have said that there's a hybrid warfare attack that's going on against America right now. How risky is that?
Well, it's real. And I think that the Russian proxy war in Ukraine or hybrid attacks, like during our presidential election, are real, and it's a threat to the United States. But it does not endanger American territorial integrity or independence, still we need to pay attention to it because all these are preludes to kinetic warfare. So by existential threat, I mean the threat to the very existence of a nation. And this is the case in point for Poland if things go bad and Russia continues after they gobbled up Ukraine.
You've mentioned in the past Poland lies between Germany and Russia, and you've talked about a need for equal terms at the table with both Germany and France. It's a diversion away from the Ukraine for a moment, but can you comment about that?
Yeah, you know what? It's like we take Germany as this I don't know timeless construct. Remember that they were divided after World War II into two parts, and only after Polish solidarity movement like really hit hard, Germany was able to unite. So they have a very short history as a united Germany, and they make their decisions kind of like gaining strength. And after the 2014 Russian invasion, Germany and France advanced ceasefire proposals, accepting the Russian territorial gains in Ukraine like they didn't care, with a naive belief that Russians were still relatively far from their borders, having a buffer like Poland between them and, of course, Ukraine. And then Germans had significant national interest in Russian fossil fuels. So when Poles protested, I remember some French politicians said that Poles had the right to remain silent. So let me just translate it. It means shut up. Okay. So they were both as those strongest countries in Europe. They were not sensitive to how such appeasement created an existential threat for Poland. Now it was 2014. Okay, and then 2022 happened.
So in 2014, there were two ceasefire agreements that essentially failed. And I think you're saying that those failed, fortunately, because they were nothing more than appeasement of Russia.
Exactly. And you know, that word appeasement, especially when you read a little bit of history, I tell you, I just finished reading a book written by our US ambassador to Poland after World War II. And every few pages, it is appeasement, and how bad it was before World War II and how bad it was after World War II. And then remember, appeasing Germans before the start of World War II didn't work, did it?
No.
Hitler would just gobble country after country, and then kaboom, the big WW2 started. So why would appeasing Russia and Ukraine today be different?
Yeah.
And Poles knew that appeasing Russia actually started during World War II. We were trying to make deals with them.
Right. Yeah.
And Russians stayed in East Germany and Poland after World War II. They didn't care that we didn't like it. So appeasement did not satisfy them. Instead, it made them more aggressive and led to the Cold War. And so we are forgetting all this. So agreeing that Russia keeps its 2014 Russian invasion territorial spoils in Ukraine was a bad strategy and empowered them, the Russians, to attack more brutally in 2022.
So the agreements actually would have ceded the very land that the Russians currently occupy, and that would have constituted an appeasement, which takes me to the question, who was it that was supporting Ukraine in 2022 after they actually instigated real kinetic warfare?
You know, I was paying attention. It was such a shock for me that it really happened. So not so much what was on the global media, but what I could get from different sources in Ukraine and Poland. So I would say that 2022, mostly Poland and America really intervened with some help from Great Britain, and all the rest were just sitting and waiting. And I think that Germany was waiting for Ukraine to lose so that they could have a great deal with the Russians and get some maybe concessions on the purchase of Russian gas and oil. And as most analysts had predicted, Ukraine would have lost in February 2022 without resolute American and Polish support. And again, some countries, especially the Baltic states and Great Britain, followed, but Germany was conspicuously reluctant to help. We remember their first shipment of helmets and calling it military support. And in the first year, because we're talking like it happened yesterday, it's been over 2 years, yes? So in the first year of the war, Germany sent 18 tanks. So you can look at numbers, you can look at millions of dollars, but how many tanks? They sent 18. And at the same time, Poland, a much less wealthy country, sent 300 tanks. So again, 18 to 300. And remember that in 2020, the German economy was about $4 trillion with a T, trillion. And the Polish economy was 600 billion with a B. So 4 trillion to 600 billion, and the 4 trillion generated this joke of a number of the tanks, 18, and the 600 billion generated 300 tanks. So if we observe actions and disregard words, promises, or accounting tables, Germany is stalling with their help. But quite honestly, rather than blame or dismiss Germans, we should look at the Polish perspective to motivate Germans to do more and be a team player. So from this perspective, the German plan to rely on Russian energy sources became a fiasco. And we should not despair or start the blame game, but we should be wiser with this experience. We should roll up our collective sleeves and come up with a winning strategy today.
Well, that certainly lends puts more flesh on your assertion that Poland lies in the middle between Germany and Russia and is needed perhaps as kind of a counterweight to the power of both. But if Germany, the most prominent and the wealthiest of the EU nations, is reluctant to support Ukraine, does that mean that Germany and other European countries are anxious to appease Russia and get back to business as usual, as it was before the 2014 invasion?
I hope that as we started those interviews that we're trying to give some facts and analyze them to make our viewers think. So just think and draw conclusions. I think they're pretty obvious. So yes, precisely. I see that Germany does not feel the Russian heat directly and has over-invested in Russian fossil fuels. It was a mistake. Yeah. They must learn to balance their energy needs with their immediate economic interests. And they cannot see that their immediate economic interests are not being served in the long run by trying to feed on insatiable Russian appetite. But one thing is certain, however, trying to appease Russia in 2014 was a strategic blunder. It was a blunder in 2022, and it is still a blunder today. And whoever wants to appease them, Germans, French, or some politicians in the United States, it is a blunder. It's a strategic mistake. We're all going to be paying for it.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like that would destabilize Europe, and concepts of national sovereignty and respect for international law that we've known in Europe for 80 years. Do you think that with all these threats, Poles feel more secure today than they have ever felt?
Both have had 80 years of relative peace behind. Mm-hmm. And within the 80 years was 45 years as the Russian colony. These were brutal times. I was there. I still remember it. It was not funny, and it was pretty depressing. And now, Poland has enjoyed about its 35 years of relative free country.
Yeah.
Uh, and Poles see that the West is not as concerned about Ukraine as the Poles are. And Poles want to contribute more meaningfully to European and global security. They would love to be allowed at the table with the big boys, to be quite honest with you. And vital European countries for decades dismissed Polish warnings of Russian expansionism. Americans were more focused on what Germany and France could bring to the table than on what the Poles might offer. Still, when you look at it, Poland pushed on and has flourished for the last 30 years.
So I think you're suggesting that Polish gains over the past 30 years, which have been rather extraordinary, that they actually have real value for European security. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, I think that it's, in a way, if you follow our media, it's almost like a secret.
Yeah.
But today, Poland is in a position to contribute more meaningfully than ever. They're on the way to having the strongest military in Europe soon. And I don't know why it doesn't make our media. I mean, it's amazing. The Poles are the only European nation, including the wealthiest Western European countries, that has met the NATO guideline of spending 2% of their GDP on defense.
Right. Yeah.
But Poles actually doubled it. They exceeded that goal by committing over 4% of its GDP now. So they're not playing games. They understand, they feel the heat from the Russians. And then they know that they are going to be engaged out there on the eastern flank, and other countries might join or help or might not. And recently, Poles have signed key military contracts with American corporations, and shipments of American tanks, aircraft, helicopters, munitions, and long-range missiles are on the way to Poland. It's an unprecedented event that has never happened, and it's amazing. It's an amazing shift, and I think we should know about it as a public, and I believe that this is the way to go.
So what I'm hearing is that American participation, or America, is actually listening a little bit more to Poland than it have in the past. But Poland's sense of urgency is more immediate than that of Germany and France. And they, and to some extent, even the United States, still relegate Poland to the children's table rather than seeing it as a full-fledged and powerful ally, maybe perhaps changing a little in the United States.
Thank you, Robert. It's exactly how I feel it is. I believe that the West should credit Poland with its enormous developmental success and project where Poland will be in, let's say, 10 years, rather than think about where Poland was 20 years ago. It is now the 6th largest economy in Europe, on the way to surpassing Italy and even Britain. With little help, Poland is on the way to becoming the 3rd largest economy in Europe. So once we look at the trends, we will clearly see that Poland is not a weak, irrelevant troublemaker afraid of its own shadow, but a significant power base in which we Americans should invest and use that investment wisely to motivate Germany and France to do more. And remember, let us remember that NATO was created to stand up to Russia, but also to control Germany. We forgot about the control of Germany part. Instead, we have invested in them with a vaguely defined hope of what strong Germany would give us Americans in return. I have not seen any report and say this is what we're going to get out of it. It's all somewhere in the haze, in the fog. So what we're left with today is that we can mostly ask them to cooperate. We have much less leverage to influence the German economy or politics than we used to. So these are the facts.
Yeah.
And let us notice that Germany and the rest of Europe already benefit from increased Polish military and economic strength. A strong Poland, together with, especially now, Sweden and Finland joining NATO, creates a possibility for a new geopolitical equation. Such an equation would allow us, the Americans, to plan from the position of strength and not fear and frustration.
So in the great American tradition of promoting competition, what you're seemingly saying is that we've perhaps overinvested particularly in Germany, and what we really need is a little more competition in Europe in order to counteract the extraordinary influence that the Germans have, which tends to be a little bit more optimistic about Russia. And the only way that that can really be done is by a country like Poland with a strong economy, recognizing them, and giving them a seat at the table equivalent to France and Germany, so that it participates more equally in the significant military and diplomatic decisions on a strategic and even operational levels.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way. Running a family, it doesn't mean that you made a plan and you say, well, that's how it's going to be because I say so. It's a struggle, and we know how it is. Sometimes families work, sometimes they don't work. Look, the country is a little bit bigger than a family, and the responsibility is bigger. And some people say, well, I don't like these global arrangements, so I'm going to quit. Well, I don't think this is the way to go. We just have to really work together. So whatever happened, a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we are in it all together, and we should work, as you said, cooperatively, but then use what we know that works, which is competition, healthy competition, and not laying blame and arguing and fighting between
right.
what we should have as partners.
Yeah.
And because Poland's going to get some capacity does not mean irresponsible individual action. But without capacity, no level of posturing would influence the enemy.
Yeah.
Observe that today, there is no European nation capable of stopping the Russians. They have no military equipment. They have no armies, nothing.
Yeah.
And we Americans are signaling that we might leave Europe if the situation turns bad in China.
Yeah.
And look, after 10 years of Russian invasion in Ukraine, no European country has a military division fully equipped and ready to do battle with Russia on the European plains. That's a different setup than sending a bunch of tanks somewhere in Africa or Asia. That's a serious Euro-Asian engagement.
Yeah. Right.
So it might look nice. An accountant can tell you we've spent so many billions of dollars, we had so many meetings, but show me the tanks. Where are those boys, the military, ready? Where are they training? So there is a lot of talk. And you know what? 12 years of talk. And what we have are some plans that maybe in 5-10 years. So of course the Russians, are motivated to continue the battle, and they're bombing cities continually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then honestly, some of us are inviting Russians to win in Ukraine and continue threats against the Baltic states or Poland. I mean, they're almost like inviting the Russians to threaten the Baltic states and Poland, and they do that.
No.
So let's ask ourselves honestly, will a more assertive Poland that works with Germany to provide European security strengthen our position in case of a confrontation with China or not?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And where is that military capacity to stop Russians if they decide to support China. I don't see it.
I don't either.
We need actions and not words. Poland gives us the best chance to create a viable countermeasure, and that Sweden and Finland joining NATO creates an unbelievable chance, I think, because Poland, Sweden, and Finland together are willing to do battle. They're not there to sit and talk and crunch numbers on the Excel. So we have a new opportunity. And I hope that we will use this newly developing opportunity wisely.
I mean, 12 years of talk, is it already too late to consider the Polish perspective, more seriously?
You know how in the Polish national anthem, it says that Poland has not died yet as long as we're alive. So I look at you, you look to me like you're alive. I feel alive. So as long as we're here, it's never too late. So no, it's not too late. But seating Poland at the table is urgent, and we should just take it, use this opportunity and do it ASAP. And you know what? Quite honestly, I'm impressed, especially with our American military leadership, because you have all this chaos of political squabbling and new divisions, and the world is shaking, and they quietly do their job professionally as the best trained military in the world.
Yeah.
So they keep their heads clear of the mess, and they're ready to act if only the politicians make up their minds.
Yeah.
And I think that all options are still on the table.
Yeah.
Regardless of Europe opposing the redeployment of the NATO forces east from Germany, our military moved on. And today, we are already in Poland. Our military is.
Yes, of course.
There is this 5th Corps Army stationed at Fort Knox, but it has a significant American presence in Poland. It moved its forward command element from Germany to Poland in 2020. So remember, just look at it. Before the Russians attacked, seriously, the 5th Corps already knew, and they were already deployed. And it's a serious military force that has been battle tested for decades, actually since World War I. So they are in Poznan, Poland, not to look cute on an army parade, but to do serious military work if needed. We also should remember that we have something that's called APS deployment. So APS is the Army Prepositioned Stock.
Yeah.
So to be battle ready, the military has a network of vast stockpiles of weapons and equipment strategically deployed worldwide. And they include everything from bullets, guns, to trucks and tanks. And where's the largest APS now?
Yeah.
It's in Poland.
Yeah, I don't think people know that.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is our military, again, I'm very impressed. And anytime I talk, and I do talk with the Polish and the American military, all the way up to the general ranks, and the Poles are steadily impressed with just the level, the quality of our American GIs. And also, we, the United States, are active in something that's called MNCNE.
Yeah.
It stands for Multinational Corps Northeast. It was formed by Poland, Denmark, and Germany when Poland joined NATO in 1999. And during the 2014 NATO summit, it was significantly beefed up and consisted of officers from 22 countries. And 6 experienced American generals were deployed to work within the MNCNE structure through the years. And that unit, its combat readiness has moved from low to high, and it is ready to do battle, especially in the theater around the Black Sea. So again, I think that the military does as much as they can.
Well, I certainly didn't know about all of that until you informed me, and I think I'm not alone. Uh, we don't seem to get that information in our media, or at least it doesn't make headlines. Although I guess we hear a lot about
It's 11 o'clock.
France and Germany, though rarely do we hear the story about how little that they've actually supported the Ukraine.
You know, I think that the situation, as we said, is really dire and critical. And the way I look at the American media, I'm going to tell you, it looks like somebody has fallen asleep behind the wheel, because they still look at Poland primarily as an insignificant troublemaker. Honestly, it's dated old news. And you see that Poland bashing, rather than supporting Poland and promoting it, is at premium in most lead media outlets.
Yeah.
Now, just what is like 2 weeks ago, the Polish president and prime minister met President Biden in the White House. How much coverage did this unprecedented, strategically important meeting get in our media?
Yeah.
Biden met with the Polish president, who is from one party, and the prime minister of the rival party, who
Yeah.
beat the president's party in recent elections. So there's a lot of tension in
Right.
Poland politically. And it's this bipartisan meeting was huge news.
Yes, of course.
Poland is divided between these two parties, much as the United States is divided between the Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
And Biden negotiated with them, the president and the prime minister, signaling that Poland would better act as one regarding their national security priorities. The question is, do we act as one in the United States?
Did any agreement come out of that meeting?
You know what? I'm going to just start with this. How many of you know that during this meeting, the US has agreed on selling Poland $4 billion, with a B, $4 billion worth of military equipment, including long-range air-to-air and air-to-land missiles able to reach Moscow? It's a fundamental game changer, boosting Poland's military spending to $30 billion. But our media is almost silent about these revelations. For 10 years, Poland has struggled to buy a few military helicopters, to be quite honest with you, and from different countries. And these three guys, our president and the president and prime minister of Poland, sat down at the White House, and Poland is buying almost 100 of the most modern Apache helicopters. Don't tell me that it is not newsworthy.
It's exceptionally newsworthy. Also, the fact that Biden managed to negotiate with two parties that are kind of at each other's throats and reach a common agreement is a rather amazing accomplishment. But what do we do now? What's the next step?
Well, I would say I would encourage our media to wake up first and report on recent Polish developments and the way we are, the way we're headed. They should not be stuck in the world as it looked when most of our anchors were hired 20, 30 years ago. It is a welcome change that Poland's defense minister, Sikorski, is getting some airtime.
Yeah.
But notice, most are surprised and impressed with his performance.
Yes, yes.
So this surprise proves that our expectations and current knowledge do not correspond with facts on the ground.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about free speech in our recent interviews. So let us not self-censor ourselves and be afraid of the Russian bear. Let's talk freely about what we see today and what the trends are showing. So we should debate the Polish perspective with more attention and respect and stop being afraid.
Well, thank you, Bogdan. You've brought a call to action to us, and brought a lot of controversial issues to the forefront that I think probably merit some follow-up in future interviews, particularly the German and French strategies for tackling the threat. I'm dying to know more about how you see the Polish perspective, especially if we were to talk without the fear of the Russian bear. But I think our time has come to an end, and I want to thank you so much for, again, being so insightful.
Well, thank you, Robert. It's been fun as always, and I'm just going to repeat that I'm going to try to do my best, be honest, because I think that we should know about all these things. And viewers, thank you for your attention. We read every comment, and the increases lately have motivated us. So I know we'll be back, and hopefully you're going to be with us as well. Till the next time, thank you.